Welcome to Lavender, Hazelwood Witches. I am Aurora. In just a few minutes, I'm going to talk about 3 different ways you can communicate with your pet or animals around you telepathically, and a couple other things in there to try as well that might help you out. But first, I want to give you an update on who won the poll on Patreon, and it is Shelter Friend Ukraine. So our $100 is going to help the war, the animals in the war. If you'd like to make a one-time donation, I've got a link in the description. It's a Ko-fi link in the description below if you'd like to add to the $100 that we're sending over on Sunday. I found an injured squirrel, which I'm taking to an animal hospital right now, and you can't see me at all. Let's see how she's doing. I don't know if it's a he or she. Can't really see it. I had found an injured squirrel and was in the midst of taking it to the local animal hospital.
Sure, yeah.
And it just got me thinking about this topic today.
Oh, you're wildlife. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have you fill this out.
Sure.
He's being mean tonight, so just heads up. Thank you.
Hello, kitty. And how animals respond to who we're being. What's up, kiddo? And that there are ways of communicating in ways that we don't typically think of when we think of communicating with
one. Yeah, we're
one.
for sure keeping it. They're like working with the patient right now. But yeah, she thinks the leg is broken.
So this video is going to talk a bit about that. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Hi, kitty. You know, there are lots of different ways that we communicate with our furry friends and our feathered friends and our scaly friends. I think the easiest is when you have a companion animal that you know really well, because you develop, you know, a rapport. You start understanding one another, and it's generally not going to be verbal. With dogs, you know, clearly you can, and with cats too, actually. And there's been lots of advances in terms of being able to communicate thoughts through like word buttons, which is really fascinating. But that isn't really what this video is about. It's more about reading the animals around us and what they're communicating and how to sort of like be in the same field as them, if that makes sense. So if you've had an animal, you know that they definitely communicate through feelings and through body language. And those are the easiest ways to kind of start tuning into their energy and what they mean at any given point. We can also communicate with them telepathically. And yes, I know to some out there that sounds really strange, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, but I do want to share some things with you that I think are really interesting that I have experienced. When you're talking to a child, for instance, you're sort of moving towards their level of understanding. And in the same way, that's how you communicate with animals as well, is like move to their level of understanding, because we just don't experience life the same. I think the biggest influence is how stable and calm we are around animals. So like if you come at them like a friend with calm, steady energy, you can, for instance, interact and pick up a bee and not really worry about being stung. I've picked up countless bees, and as long as I move stably and calmly and talk to them like they're friends, then they get the message. And it's the same way with you know, pretty much all animals. Like there's this one time that I was on a subway platform, and I saw a little mouse running at one end of the subway platform. So I approached it and I came up right next to it, and what I ended up doing was walking alongside it and sort of escorting it to the further end of the platform, and it literally walked next to my foot. Like if this was my foot, it was just walking, you know, scurrying right next to it. I'd take a step like this, and it was just walking alongside. There was at one point where I stopped and it stopped. We both stopped, and it scurried across my toes and onto the other side of my foot. If I had freaked out and started screaming or jumping around, then I would have made it defensive and feeling like it needed to defend itself, either by fight or flight. response. But we can totally avoid those things just by coming at animals with a calm and measured approach, sort of a meditative approach. So that's just kind of like the foundation, I suppose, that I wanted to start this conversation off with. And then I wanted to move into the more telepathic conversation around this. And I read an animal communication book years ago, and I can't remember what the book was at this point, but there are some tips in it that I thought I would share with you. So one, you can communicate with mental images. So if you picture something in your mind, you need to have their focus. Your dog is focused on something else and it's not paying attention to you, then your image is not going to go through. And sometimes it's hard to tell. They're looking at something else, but they are tuned into you. But for the most part, make sure you have sort of like their attention in some way. And picture in your mind what you want them to do. And I've played with this a bit. Probably the most cool example of this that actually shocked me at the time. I was walking my dog Ludo, and I mean, I'd walked him for years and never come across this, but I just started thinking about this person that I knew whose dog would go around and eat dried worms that were on the sidewalk. And I had never known another dog who'd done this. Ludo had never done it. And not 10 seconds later, I see Ludo sniffing the sidewalk and pick up 2 crunchy worms and eat them. I didn't send him this message, but he was paying attention to me, and I apparently gave him the idea. He never did it again. It was only that one time, and I was flabbergasted by this. But this is the kind of interaction or attention that leads to us being able to sort of transmit our inner vision to each other. So it's not quite as hard to communicate with them as it might seem. We're always in constant communication, and there's a way that we can take advantage of this and communicate the things that we want to communicate to an animal. And this doesn't stop at just our furry companions, but here's something that I do. This was one of the tips in the book, is you can warn an animal of danger by sending them images that they might understand. So if you see like a squirrel next to the side of a road and you're afraid it's gonna cross it, send them an image. Think about spikes coming out of the road, think about something scary coming out of the road, but give them a really dangerous feeling sense image that they can use to discern whether or not the road is a good place to be. I wish I could remember this book. If you know what it is, drop it in the comment section. If you're leaving for a few days from home and you'll be back in like say 3 days and your animal is staying home, the way that you want to communicate a day is by thinking of the cycle of day to night. If you think about one revolution or one day to night, a fading sunshine down to the moon. Instead of saying, I'm going to be gone for 3 days, you say, I'm going to be gone for 1 day, that image, a second image, a third image, because that is how they understand time, is through daylight and darkness. So that's another tip for communicating with your animal when you're leaving. There is one other thing that I do, which is when I see an animal outside that I connect with in some way, I visualize a safety bubble. It's a protective spell that anything that might harm them will just bounce off. It can't even get near them. That's something I practice with the squirrels, with Wilhelmina and Beaver in my yard, and also even with my own pets. So that's it. Those are a few things that you might be interested in playing with.